Hi, welcome. A very interesting story we're about to tell. The Pfizer scandal of 1996. Now that remains one of the most harrowing examples of corporate malpractice on African soil. During a devastating meningitis outbreak in Kano, Nigeria, the pharmaceutical giant Pfizer conducted an experimental drug trial on vulnerable children without adequate information consent. 11 children reportedly died, and dozens more suffered severe side effects ranging from paralysis to brain damage. Though Pfizer eventually paid millions in settlements, the case has left an indelible scar on public health trust in Nigeria and continues to influence vaccine hesitancy today. The scandal exposed not only the ethical lapses in clinical trials, but also the systemic failures of oversight and accountability. The leaked cables from WikiLeaks and investigative reports have revealed allegations of blackmail and cover-ups involving high-ranking officials. The controversy has since become a cautionary tale for global health initiatives, highlighting the dangers of exploiting under-resourced regions for experimental purposes and the long-term damage it can cause to communities, people, and families. And only just recently, our new Central investigative journalist, Marshall Ononye, my apologies, Marshall, no hard feelings, brought us a very interesting expose as to what's happening with the victims and their families for 28 years after. Now, joining us today to unpack the many layers of this scandal and its lingering effects are three distinguished, well, we were to have three guests. However, one of them, I'll tell why, had to pull out. But still, we have with us Dr. Philip Njemanze, Chairman of the International Institute of Advanced Research and Training at Chidikan Medical Center. And also we have Dr. Alero Roberts, Associate Professor at the College of Medicine, University of Lagos. Thank you very much for joining us. We were to have David Hundeyin join us, but unfortunately he has a family emergency and so cannot be here with us today. But we wish him well and hopefully that we can have him on board next time.
Doctors, many thanks for joining us. And let me just start by just talking about this unethical medical trials that has happened in 1996 and the lasting effect that it's had on the communities and the lives of the people after. And I have to ask you about what could have possibly slipped through the cracks that Pfizer could have gone to Kano to do such an unethical medical trial such as this. I'll start with you, Dr. Alero.
Thank you very much for having me. I have to throw some controversy down on the table, number one. I won't say anything slipped through the cracks. This is a subject I teach, funnily enough, in the medical school at undergraduate and postgraduate levels. So it's something that we have packed and unpacked and repacked and taken apart, and we have to change our thinking. Nothing slipped through the cracks. Pfizer cannot find their way to Kano unaccompanied, unguided, and undirected. They got there because there was an emergency going on. There was a situation. It has been an ongoing situation. Let us not forget, we have annual outbreaks of meningitis in that part of the country. It is what we call the CSM belt, that meningitis belt that stretches all the way from the westmost point of the west coast of Africa all the way across the Sahel region into the Somalia region. So it's an ongoing thing. And a drug was being trialed to see whether it can help and change the clinical outcome. The place to trial that drug, to have that drug trial, is a place where the disease is happening. They've done the phase 1, the phase 2, they're now moving into the phase 3. So I'd like to change that narrative, first of all, that Pfizer didn't just happen on Kano, nothing slipped through the cracks. Things were put in place, their protocols, their processes. Were they strong enough? Were there gaps and lapses? Was there human error? Those are the questions that we need to be asking and answering.
Right. Doctor, do you agree as well that nothing slipped through the cracks? Is just, they were prepared to be there and they were welcomed with open arms?
Well, as you rightly pointed out, there was an emergency, health emergency. And of course, as is usual, the government and all the authorities are looking for.
Oh, we seem to be having an issue with Dr. Njemanze's connection. We hope to get him back. But, Dr. Alero, if you would give us a moment, we are going to play a bit of the package which we put together here at News Central. And then when we get back, perhaps maybe we would have established or re-established connection with Dr. Njemanze, and he can continue with his answer there. So let's see this package.
At the wake of a meningitis outbreak in 1996 in Kano State, Pfizer, a pharmaceutical giant offering to help, reportedly treated 200 children, administering Trovan to them, a drug which at the time was yet to get approval from the US FDA. This led to the death of some of the children and deformities in others. 28 years later, I head to Kano State to find out the current condition of the victims of Pfizer's experimental drug. The victims were a bit difficult to locate, but after 2 days of interacting with the locals and asking the right questions, I finally arrived at the residence of late Malam and Malama Salisu, parents to Rukaya.
When I was like 15 years old, I asked my mom what happened to me. That all my brothers and sisters look very normal, but me, I'm looking like that. I am normal before the vaccination. When she take me to the hospital, they say it's damaged my organs, my hormones. They kill my hormones that will help me to grow, that will help my teeth to be strong, that help my body to be normal like other people. They damage that organs. I will not grow again. My bone will be not strong again as normal people. Every year I will break. My leg will be break. That's why I'm not growing. Even my teeth are not strong. Even school, my parents do not put me because if I am playing with my mates, anything mistake, if I fall, I will get injury.
Rukaya is just one of several others still reeling from the effects of Pfizer's experimental drug, Trovan.
My name is Saadatu Tijani. I was born in Bakinrua. I was administered with a medication for meningitis at the time. I have a hospital card and a little toy that was given to me at the time at the hospital. My parents told me that before the Pfizer medication at the hospital, my legs were all right and I could move around without any problem. I could get on top of the bed and come down all by myself. I could hold things firmly while standing and move around with my legs. But since after the Pfizer medications, my legs started getting bad, and I could no longer hold on to things firmly, nor do things that require energy. It was as if my legs were cut off.
A lokacin ba ni da lafiya aka kai ni asibiti, ina cutar ƙyanda, aka kai ni asibiti.
My parents told me that when I was a little girl, at about 3 years of age, a drug known as Pfizer was administered on me, and then afterward, I couldn't move my legs. It started by shrinking one of my legs, completely drying it up, and then 2 days after being taken to the hospital, the other one also shrunk and dried up.
After a lengthy legal battle that ensued following the Kano meningitis outbreak in 1996, which had the state government, federal government, and parents of victims of the faulty Trovan medical experiment quoted as parties to the sue against Pfizer. In August of 2011, Pfizer had claimed that it had paid the sum of $175,000 each to 4 of the parents who lost their children to the medical experiment and added that in the days that were to follow, more parents were to get compensation. It further added that the Kano state government was paid. Now, the big question for me was, did these parents actually get the sum of $175,000 each, which at the time Pfizer made the announcement amounted to 64 million naira each? And Kano State, why did it have to get an equivalent of 27 billion naira? These questions seem to be seeking answers, which of course I hope to find.
I'm the father of Hadiza Dambuzu, who is a victim of Pfizer trial carried out in 1996 by the Pfizer pharmaceutical company. So she died. After that, Pfizer promised to give us compensation. Each victim will be given 175 US dollars. Very unfortunate, we were not given 175 US dollars. We were given only 7,000 US dollars, which is equivalent to 2.4 naira Nigerian currency. So we need help. We need assistance from all angles to collect the remaining balance.
I was paid 2 million naira and a few fractions, not up to 40,000 naira after changing it. I think it was around 2,020,000. They even called other victims and myself in to conduct DNA tests on us. I was part of it and my saliva was taken.
These victims have continued to cry foul at the injustice meted out on them, though Pfizer maintains the children died from meningitis, not the trial drug, and describes its trial largely as a humanitarian effort aimed at saving lives during a 1996 epidemic. Investigations have revealed that Pfizer was indeed responsible for the deaths and guilty of conducting human trials without informed consent. While those who lost their children to the experimental drug will continue to mourn their losses, knowing that no form of compensation can bring their children back, others may have to live the rest of their lives tending to their children with permanent deformities. In the coming days, I hope to dig deeper in the issues around the Trovan disaster in Kano State, the lives of the victims, and allegations of improprieties surrounding the compensation. Marshall Anthony Onoye for News Central.
It's a very interesting expose there, and I do hope that our viewers would actually find it in our YouTube page where you can watch this at your leisure. But it's a very sad one, I must say, and you would agree with me that those lives that were touched by this mishap, well, they've suffered a lot. Now, to come back to our guests, and I'm hoping that we have Dr. Njemanze back with us here, because I'm about to ask about compensation. Dr. Njemanze, welcome back, and Dr. Alero as well. Now, regarding the compensation that these individuals and their families actually received, to the tune of 175 million, was it $1,000 US dollars, which is a very big sum. But, however, only to have been given the paltry sum of 2 million naira. In the first place, was the original sum enough for the victims? Do you think that it was compensation enough for the victims? We'll talk about the racketeering that happened for after, but the original sum of $175 million, was it enough for each victim? Dr. Njemanze, please.
Yes. I don't think that amount will be enough because compensations are styled according to it will take for the person to survive a lifetime with the deformity. What that means is that you will look at somebody with a deformity and say, okay, over these years, what will be the need the person have to deal with in terms of having assistance to move from one place to the other, earning a decent living, and making sure that they can take care of medical emergencies that will come up. When you do that, no matter that it looks as if that this is a substantial amount, but it's not really enough to do that over a lifetime. So I think the compensation that was given originally is too little. In the U.S., this amounts to something like $10–20 million for such an error. So I think in Nigeria it should be a lot more because the challenges of special care, which might not be available locally, and the person has to travel outside the country to get this special care, will even be more involving for those who are victims. So I think the original amount was too small.
Dr. Alero, and hopefully Dr. Njemanze, you can also answer this question, but let me come to you, Dr. Alero. An outbreak like this happened in 1996. Meningitis also, we've seen more outbreaks. There's also the cholera outbreak from this year. There's also the AIDS and HIV epidemic of the 90s. I think 1996, 1995, 1994. We saw those situations happen. And it makes one wonder how organizations like this and pharmaceutical giants like this and corporations like this who step in to want to aid provide a drug that has not been certified by the FCDA, hopefully that's correct. So how then do you check it as a Ministry of Health who is welcoming this aid? How do you check the drugs or check the pharmaceutical aid that they are bringing to be used as such outbreak? Just make me understand how this happened.
Okay, so this is the conversation we have in the classroom very many times. When I ask my students, I say, set aside your emotions and your human empathy and sympathy and just put on your science hats, your hat of science that looks simply at facts. Number one, they were not coming to offer aid. This is a drug company. Their reason for being is research, development of new drugs, chemicals, medicaments for the purpose of making money. So obviously, for them to do that, those drugs have to do what they set out to do. If the drug isn't a success, they don't make any money. So they have an innate, built-in reason for that drug being good and making a success, and being successful at whatever it's set out to do. So that's number one. Number two, it can only be tested in a place where the disease is going on. Nigeria, part of the Sahel region, the CSM belt, this is an epidemic that happens year after year after year after year. And clearly, there's been a lot of research and development going on in that. Number three, drugs don't just come to the market. Like I said, there are processes, there are procedures. They start in the laboratory, in the petri dishes. There's the phase 1, there's the phase 2. Then they come into the phase 3, and then the phase 4. Even after the drug hits the market, it's still being monitored, evaluated, and investigated. So there's a process. This is a scientific process that goes on no matter what we're talking about, from vitamin C to any antiretroviral, antibacterial, anti-epileptic drug. All drugs go through these processes.
Right.
So that's there. The second thing we have to remember is that every single drug has side effects. So there's no emotion about that. Even the paracetamol and the aspirins that you're taking, they have side effects. These side effects may affect some people more than others, and that's why you get these percentages coming in there that some people are more affected than others by these side effects. So these are known risks that we take in taking any medication, okay? So the question then comes, how do we check it? This is, I suppose, one of the things that we're still going to talk about, this issue of ethical research, which is actually the area that I teach. How do we conduct ethical research? We have to conduct this research. The world needs new drugs, new vaccines, new medicaments for the diseases that we're battling. And every day we're looking for how to improve on this. And, you know, the loss, I'm sorry, I'm going to throw a lot of controversy on the table. I think we've lost a very good chemical in Trovan because of the emotions that are being assigned to this. You know, the truth of the matter is children would have died of CSM, cerebrospinal meningitis, with or without this drug. And that's just the truth. Children have been dying of meningitis and are still dying of meningitis up till today. So the question is, we need to have this ethical research processes. Sorry.
So Dr. Alero, are you saying that perhaps maybe even Trovan was actually responsible for, well, making other children healthier while others might have suffered side effects? Is that a summary of what you're saying?
We've lost that data. I cannot answer that question.
Okay.
Right.
So now, based on that, and since this is your area of expertise, how do you reconcile the need for urgent medical intervention versus risk. Like in this case, there was a meningitis.
That is the right question to ask. Because we have since learned through all of this and, strengthening of ethical principles and whatnot, you cannot really use an emergency situation to test the trial drug. This is the outcome. And this is a global outcome.
Right. Dr. Njemanze, let me also ask you as well, right? You are in the laboratory and you are always on the petri dish, and you've also talked about, ethics and just doing things right. You've also been concerned about, I remember we had a conversation about vaccines as well when the vaccines were coming in, and this time it had, I think it was for cholera or the other one, Lassa fever, there we go. So the conversation then is, with ethics, risks, the checks and the balances, where do we draw the line? Who is to blame in this situation? The Ministry of Health, the public health, the private sector, or who is to blame in this latter of 1996?
Yeah, the issue here is that there is standard care for meningitis. Now, if you are going to do a drug trial, that means there will be a control group. You have to deny that standard care. That's the problem. Because otherwise, you would have given it with the standard care, the ones we know that work. Once you don't know that whether it will work at all, you are going to deny it to a whole group. And should there be a major misfortune there, then you have actually caused a drug-related injury. So that's where the fault is going. That the people were denied standard care, and then this resulted in the malformations and problems they have. So that's what the case is all about. It's not really that you should not try drug. It's just that you denied what would have otherwise been the standard thing to do. And that's where the is, yeah.
There was also the conversation of consent as well. The patients or the victims were not aware that what they were taking was a trial and it has not been approved by the body that is approving all the medicines in the US. And they were being tried. They didn't realize that that's what it was. So let's talk about that as well. Should the Ministry of Health take a closer look at things like this? When patients, in the north, there's also the issue of, education and there's disparity of it when, they're not aware. Let's talk about that. Dr. Njemanze, please. Yeah.
Yes, the issue of consent has to be there. It's the foundation of medicine. We call it the health declaration. That means for every procedure, even when you have standard care, you must ask the person to consent. You see, when you reach the consent issue, you have actually nullified the good intention of the medicine. I want to give you a drug, whether it's a trial drug or it's a normal drug, you must have to make the person understand what you are going to accept that. That is standard. And there is no room for what all kind of scandalous things we hear. People must be vaccine mandate. What does that mean? You want to mandate something that I don't have to consent for me to receive. That's not medicine. That's some kind of extreme enforcement that has no place in medicine. Medicine, foundation of medicine is consent. So consent is the foundation. And in this case, there was a breach of consent. And it's not just consent, it's informed consent. Informed consent would mean that if you take this drug, these are the injuries you should expect. But we are going to take measures to mitigate those injuries. So that is what is called informed consent, that the person knows there is a likelihood of some bad outcome coming, but everything will be done in order to mitigate that. So if this was breached, and it's actually a very bad thing, and I think Nigeria should take it very seriously, because just to put in the issues here, joining my colleague to put in some controversial, it is even more actual now, because you have people say that something that biolabs in Africa, and including some in Nigeria. If there is a leak now, you will see all the drug trials going on of how to combat that virus without even consent. So I think it's not just a matter of the ministry, but it's a matter of the parliamentary oversight, because this has to deal with fundamental human rights, the human rights of each individual of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So it belongs to parliament oversight. That means we should have National Assembly Committee looking into all these issues in terms of are we respecting fundamental human rights of Nigeria? So, in every
so Dr.
And so should it across ECOWAS and across state.
So Dr. Njemanze, real quickly, from what you're saying, you're stating that this situation could have been helped with simple basic care and there would have been no need for the vaccines. Am I correct?
Yes, in the sense that, yes, there is the basic care for meningitis before they knew. That standard care could have been given. So this one that is unknown is just off the table, because we are trying something which we don't know the outcome and what to be.
Okay then.
Dr. Alero, I don't think that you made a comment about that the data that they must have collated during the trial of this drug in 1996 must have been lost, and that something valuable from Trovan must have come out of it. I don't think it was lost. And my theory is, remember one of the respondents in that interview, or rather in that investigative piece, was saying that her DNA was collected and there was a mouth swab that went with it. Do you think that that data is out there with Pfizer? Because Pfizer is huge.
What I'm saying is that the scientific community has lost access to that. The data is definitely there. Data, you are right, data doesn't get lost as such, but the data is there, but nobody's going to touch it with a 10-foot badge pole. Nobody will want their name associated with it in any way, shape, or form. So I think the DNA that was collected at that time was to make sure that the person who was getting the compensation was the person who was injured, or daughter or parents to the person that, So I think that was a simple, let's identify who you are, and if you are the one who's eligible for the compensation. So that would have been more of a legal issue.
Dr. Alero,
but you're right, the data is there somewhere, probably locked in a deep cyber vault somewhere, and nobody's going to put their hands to paper to say, right, I signed for the release.
I volunteer as tributes, to go get it.
No, sweetheart, trust me, you don't want to go there, you don't want to go there.
Yeah. We want to say thank you very much, and especially to you, Dr. Alero, would like to invite you over so we can actually have another discussion regarding human tests when it comes to your area of expertise, which is the ethics of trials. But thank you very much, doctors, for joining us and giving us your expert opinion on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.